All right, guys. So this is take two of the 22-minute video that I tried making about this topic earlier. So hopefully this one goes shorter and better. So I wanted to talk to you about my Spanish journey using MIA, AJAT, Anti-Moon, Immersion, blah 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 method, right? Okay. So my name's Shane. I originally started learning Spanish um, 2.5 years ago. Seriously. Before that, I had 2 years of Spanish in high school, which is basically a half-ass version of not even studying Spanish. I don't know. You can learn more from a textbook in a week or something. I guarantee you. Um, we probably learned around 100 to 200 words total in 2 years, which is nothing, you know. So for those 2 years, I probably learned maybe 20 words that stuck. And I say 20 because I remember doing the first Anki deck, which I will get to, that I downloaded, and I probably knew the first 20 pretty down pat. Um, Everything after that, no clue, nothing, nada. So yeah, I started in December 2017 learning Spanish. I know that because I downloaded the first Anki deck then. That was um, a deck that had 5,000 of the most common Spanish words with the frequency order. So it was really, really helpful jumping into Spanish itself. I found out about Anki after doing a bunch of research over years. I always wanted to learn Spanish, learn a new language. It's always been fascinating to me. I mean, I remember being like 12, 13 years old, looking it up. I was just like, oh, I was so enamored by people that could speak different languages like that. I thought it was so cool. So yeah, it was just years of kind of language learning, resource gathering. And I think sometimes towards the end of 2017, I stumbled across like the AJAT method. I think I found Matt versus Japan's channel. Then, so yeah, it was awesome. It was interesting to find that, especially when I wanted to learn Spanish. And also had a tangential interest in learning Japanese, which still persists to this day. I'm actually doing one of Matt's decks right now, the remembering the kanji, not the production one, I guess the recall one, RRTK. I don't know what he calls it now. So, but yeah, so December 2017 is when I started with Anki. That was 885 days ago today. So I pulled up the Anki stats just to check it out, right? So what I do. So I'm going to talk about that first kind of year summary, okay? So for the first 6 months, I used that deck to learn the most common Spanish words, right? So those common Spanish words are, you know, I think it was the first 2,000 is what I did for 1 year. At the 6 month mark, I think I was at 1,000, 1,000 or so. And the deck was interesting because it had a recall and production, where the recall would have Spanish on the front, English on the back. It was a bilingual deck, and the production would have English on the front, Spanish on the back. Now, do I think that that was necessary using that kind of system? No, I don't think the recall actually helped me too much because immersion would have sorted that out anyway. So I was taking time away from actually learning new words. If I were to go back, that's the first thing I would change. I would delete all the recall. I'm sorry, all the production. I'm sorry if I said that wrong. I would delete all the production cards and keep all the recall cards. I would not do any production cards. I don't think the production cards help at all now because immersion is going to take care of them. Hopefully I said that right. I don't know. So that hopefully that cleared it up. Right. So for that first 6 months, learned maybe 1,000 words, recall words, and I think that it definitely helped. I remember trying to immerse and actually understanding things. I was like, "What? This works?" That's kind of when I learned, that Anki. Honestly, it does work like magic. It's insane. I kept pretty consistent that first 6 months in terms of learning words through Anki. So I give all that credit to Anki, honestly, because immersion was cool. I mean, I was doing for the first 6 months, I was immersing maybe 30 minutes a day. I was still in university at the time, and Spanish definitely was not a priority. It was something I always wanted to do, though, so I kept at it. It was not a priority. So 30 minutes a day, active, almost no passive. Maybe I'd probably listen to a song or something for passive immersion. And that was knowing everything about AJAT too, which is you know, I thought it was pretty extreme at that time. I'm not that conscientious of a person to spend 24 hours a day with a language, and I don't think I would prioritize it that much, right? But at that time, I was like immersion. I was convinced immersion, immersion, immersion. Still am convinced, but that's me being convinced early on, and still not following it. So I kind of want to talk about that, right? About 20 minutes a day, or 20 to 30 minutes a day, and then maybe 10 minutes of passive listening to songs or something. Cool. So how was my comprehension at that point? Um, I was at a point where I could understand maybe 30, I guess, yeah, 30% of what I was listening to, 30 to 50 maybe, depending on the show. I downloaded Hello Talk at that point, and I was actually outputting. I was really outputting, because that's something that helped me. Definitely stick with the language. At that point, I'd met a couple friends that I still talk to this day, and they kind of anchored me down into the language, right? They kind of gave me ties to the language learning community and ties to the Spanish speaking world, and that definitely kept me motivated. I don't think there's a chance without them I would have not continued, because I don't know, not speaking is a bit kind of pointless to me. Language is supposed to be a tool to communicate, right? And even if you know just a little bit, as the saying goes, even if you know just a little bit, it's awesome. It's one of the only things where knowing just a little bit of something is useful. It's not like I'm an engineer. It's not like knowing just F is equal to MA is going to be useful, right? I mean, you need to learn the entire corpus of engineering, or I guess of a subject. So, yeah, so I mean, language at that point, I wanted to use it. I started outputting, and I think during that kind of stage of my learning, I spent. I wrote. Sorry, if I'm looking here, I wrote something down. 20 hours of output, maybe. But it was 20 hours of fun, right? It was fun with the language. It kept me motivated. I was absolutely dog shit. I could not speak whatsoever, right? Um, but surprisingly, I could understand. My partner obviously would speak slow. He would speak with simple vocabulary. But I mean, interaction with the language is what helps you get better. I mean, that's how children get better, right? I mean, someone needs to interact, right? And I guess I think I read a study saying that you could just you could just sit a kid in front of a TV, and it's possible that they won't learn a foreign language just listening to it. But if you have someone sit there and interact with them, they'll learn it. Um, and I don't know if that's a quirk of our brain, or if it's literally just the way that um, memory works. It's stuck into a deeper context with someone speaking to you. But I still remember words hearing my buddy speak right now to this day. I never Anki'd it. I never SRS'd it. But he would say a word. I'd ask, what does that mean? And he'd tell me the meaning. Boom. Locked in. Never forgot it. So I think that was a really interesting experience. But my opinion on output, don't do it. It kind of sucks. Don't do it. It doesn't help. It just kind of it sucks trying to produce something you don't know, right? So if I would recommend anything early on, it would be some form of like crosstalk where you're speaking your language, right? So I'll be speaking English, and the other person will be speaking Spanish to me, and we just speak like that. Because I definitely think this works, because you get to learn vocab and grammatical structures and the slang of a language, like slang especially pretty easily, especially when the person's speaking naturally and at a good speed. But I only recommend it if you're at like an intermediate level, which is somewhere where I'm at right now. On the European scale, I'm probably at the cusp of B2, but I'll talk about my experience now in a bit. So yeah, so from that first 6 months to a year, all I would do was Anki words. I got to 2,000 words known in Spanish. I would listen. I would watch YouTube videos. I'd try and watch Netflix. At that point, still understanding only 50%. If a video was too hard, let it go. I wouldn't even care. I never that wasn't the point where I could tolerate ambiguity. So, which I kind of regret now, but it's a learning process, right? I would have gotten better if I stuck with it, but at that point, I didn't know I didn't know better, or I should have known better. But I was doing something every day, which I think is what counts. Okay, so after the first year, I could probably understand maybe 50% pretty solidly, but I was still missing a lot of vocab, right? At this point, I believe MIA says that you should start sentence mining, and maybe a year later, start the monolingual transition. I never started sentence mining. Well, actually, scratch that. I recently started sentence mining 2.5 years in, and I never did the monolingual transition. But I'll talk about this next year and a half. So from a year to 2.5 years, what I did was the same. I'll just watch YouTube videos, watch Netflix. But at this point, I think the main change was that my ability to tolerate ambiguity was getting way better. I would sit there, even if I didn't understand anything, I would sit there and handle it. Just try and find the words that I knew, find the grammatical structures, find the phrases that I knew, and spot them. If I could spot them, I was a happy camper. It was awesome. So that was a major change from that first year to moving on to the next year. Tolerating ambiguity. I definitely think that and having fun with the language is the most important aspect of learning the language. Okay, so yeah, from that first to second year, same thing. I think most things started changing around. Actually, I did forget one thing. At that point, I had quit learning about a year and a half in. I'd quit learning from that 5,000 isolated vocab deck and switched to a deck that had 14,000 Spanish sentences. On average, I've used about 10 a day. I learned about 10 sentences a day. There were days where I didn't do it every day, especially since I had a job at that point. I graduated and I was working 80 hours a week. So Spanish kind of fell even more. What I did at that point was switched most of my active immersion to passive, and I still probably got an hour a day at the very least. I know it's still not much, but I did not want what I learned to deteriorate. And so an hour of active and passive combined, I probably got 15 minutes of active a day. The rest was passive. And at that point, I still hadn't started reading, and this is going to be the point of the video later on, what I'm going to be doing. I'd done no reading, maybe just a couple articles, but I still was not comfortable reading, right? It was still a hard process for me. What next? Right, okay. Yeah, so with the introduction of that 14,000 sentence deck, I had also downloaded Morphman, which I definitely think was a great addition. I got a ton of I+1 sentences, a lot of the grammatical structures and conjugations maybe that I never even saw, never even thought of, popped up as soon as I clicked Control M, right, on Morphman and to kind of recalc the deck. So Morphman really helped with that. It definitely also improved my listening because I would find, and I think that's the magic of Anki. You're introduced to a word in Anki, and then you find it out in the wild in Immersion. So that happened a lot, and I knocked out in about 400 days, which is, I wrote this down, 446 days ago. That's when I downloaded it. I'd knocked out around 4,000 cards. Um, but at this point, I kind of fell back on Anki. My deck stats say that I only did 23. I was only active 23% of those 446 days, which is like 115 days. So for most of the time, I was not studying in Anki. The rest was passive and active immersion. So if I did anything at all, it was watch a YouTube video and leave passive and active stuff replaying. I would download videos from YouTube that I've already watched and keep it as passive immersion. It still just pops up, when I enter my truck, it pops up some YouTube videos. So, I would just leave it on. I'd probably listen to it for 45 minutes to an hour. And that's the average I kept it at, an hour a day for a long time, till I got to this point. Output practice wise, I didn't do too much. I was still outputting, but maybe 30 minutes a week. Nothing crazy, right? Then I'd probably text some of my friends. Not too long conversations, but yeah, nothing too crazy. And that's where I'm at. I'm at the point right now where I'm probably on the cusp of being at a B2 level where everything's super fluid. I can speak. I can understand about 80 to 90% of what a TV show is saying. I could enjoy YouTube videos without problems. I have fun in language, and this is the point where I always wanted to get to, where I'm having fun in the language with native content. I don't listen to any beginner content ever. It's all native content, travel vlogs, Call of Duty Warzone videos, stuff like that. Just things that like interest me. Yeah, so it's really good. It's really fun. I just watched one of the major TV series, La Casa de Papel. I love the Spanish accent from Spain. I love the Argentinian accent. I'm trying to model it more. So we'll see what happens. But at this point, if I had to move to a Spanish-speaking country and live, I'd be totally fine. I'd say my level is probably at the level of a 10 to 12-year-old child, which doesn't sound too good, but is functional, is not fluent. I'm not going to say fluent. I'm not fluent. I don't consider myself fluent, but other people do. Other people say, "Oh, you're so fluent." But people do that. I mean, I've said maybe one sentence before to native speakers in Hello Talk, and they say, "Oh, you're so fluent." But I do say I can have a reasonable conversation because I've had hour-long conversations at a normal conversational speed with people before. There's obviously words I never understood, or I'd have to ask them to repeat it, but nothing crazy. I mean, I've had an hour-long conversation before, which blows my mind. I mean, like the Immersion Anki combination honestly works like magic. It really does, man. It blows my mind, and I'm looking forward to taking it further, which is basically the point of this video. So for the next half a year, I've written down some goals. Like I said, I didn't do the MIA method, as strictly as possible. Not even. I've barely read. I've read maybe 150 pages of a novel over the course of a year. Right, that's nothing. 20 to 30 news articles, and then just text messages. Nothing too crazy. Not a lot. So my goal is to hit 9,300 pages of novels read by the end of this year. And I kind of calculated that off the Anki Moon website, where they mentioned they read 60 pages a week for 3 years. So I kind of extrapolated it for 230 days, whatever's left this year, and did it to 40 pages a day, to try and see if I could really, boost, my language learning. See if I could boost my Spanish to a level that's definitely at B2, heading towards whatever C1 or whatever. I don't even know. I don't really care about that. I know it's but it's a framework that a lot of people use, and it's the most consistent framework, I think, to kind of gauge your language abilities. So I'll just go with that. Right now, somewhere around B2. Want to surpass that, get to high B2, whatever. So I'll start sentence mining for sure. I want to hit 15 cards created a day. and I want to get 3 hours of active immersion a day. Sorry, dropped my pen. That's an hour and a half in the morning, hour and a half at night, and do whatever the hell I want the rest of the day. So not too bad. Let's see what happens, especially since I'm enjoying the language now. It's going to be a blast, I think, definitely. So yeah, I mean, the point of the next videos will be to kind of show off some stats, what else I'm doing, and to kind of document the progress. So, I mean, future plans. I definitely am going to learn Italian. Going to learn Portuguese, French, maybe, and I want to say some Japanese. I definitely will do some Japanese, but I have a feeling I'm gonna want to get really good at Japanese at one point. So we'll see how that pans out. Currently doing just Anki cards for Italian, nothing crazy. All in context, no isolated vocab cards, nothing. Just started sentence cards with Italian, pre-made, just to kind of get my mind used to it. I'll probably move into Italian immersion next year after Spanish is completed, right? What else? Yeah, so I guess I'll be taking the MIA language learning red pill hardcore and kind of just reading hardcore, listening hardcore, and sentence mining hardcore. Things that I've never done. I don't think I'll be doing the monolingual transition because I've tried before. It definitely would be useful. I'm not gonna knock it. I just don't think it's that time efficient for Spanish because I can already read. I can already understand a lot at this point, so it's not something too special. I don't think for language like a European language, I don't think you're gonna need it. Just in my personal opinion, from learning Spanish, definitely not an expert, not saying this with any sort of authority or something, right? It's just in my opinion. I don't think you need it. But we'll see as I move on through more couple languages. And I definitely want to document those too. But that's getting a bit too far ahead of myself. Gonna aim for just Spanish this year, okay? Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, okay. I just want to kind of speak a little bit of Spanish, hopefully so that you get an idea. Probably will fuck it up a little bit, but I've never made a YouTube video before, so let's see. Pues quiero presentarme en español. Yo soy Shane, soy de Houston, Texas. Yo vivo aquí. Y pues quiero decir cosas que me han ayudado a aprender español. No sé, no creo que hablo muy bien, ya no tengo fluidez, pero puedo conversar con personas, creo que puedo vivir en un país hispanohablante. Me disfruto el idioma de español y no sé, yo tengo amigos que nunca pensé que iba a tener. Y no sé, es una puerta abierta, creo. Y voy a seguir aprendiéndolo al mejor nivel posible, pero vamos a ver qué pasa. Y si hay algunos o algunas hispanohablantes aquí viendo este video, dime qué opinas. Iba a decir opináis como los españoles, pero opinas de mi video. Y pues vamos a ver qué pasa. All right. Nice to talk to you guys, and see you guys on the next update video. Thanks.